Welcome back to the SimTech Podcast, a show where we explore the people, ideas, and innovation shaping the world of clinical simulation. In this episode, I'm joined by Sophie and Sarah to dive into the growing world of serious games in simulation. Together, we explore how game-based learning is being used to enhance engagement, teamwork, decision-making, and human factors training across healthcare education. From escape rooms to board games to immersive digital experiences and scenario-based challenges, we discuss what makes a serious game effective, whether the line sits between fun and learning, and how simulation teams can use these approaches to create memorable experiences. We also talk about practical side of designing serious games, including learner buy-in, balancing realism with playability, and lessons learned from running these sessions in real clinical environments. Whether you're a SimTech, educator, faculty, or just curious about how approach simulation-based education is, this episode offers plenty of ideas and inspiration. So grab a brew, settle in, and enjoy this conversation with Sophie and Sarah on serious games in clinical simulation. And welcome back to another episode here at the SimTech Podcast. Today we're going to be talking all about serious games. And to do that, I've brought along a couple of experts, ? Sophie would like to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Sophie. I'm the Learning and Development Lead at Oxford Health. I run the Master's module for minor illness. So I'm in the thick of teaching with urgent care staff.
Sarah, who are you?
I'm Sarah. I'm the Simulation Teaching Fellow at County Durham and Darlington Foundation Trust, and probably the predominant reason that the experts is a question mark rather than actual experts.
Not at all. Not at all.
I don't know if anyone's brave enough to call themselves an expert on such a broad topic.
That's Sophie, quite a level, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you are. I think Sarah's delegated you the most expertist here today.
No pressure, no pressure.
Yeah. How about, let's start with a little bit of a definition. How do you define what a serious game is?
So this is actually defined back in 2011 as being a game designed for a serious purpose. So for me, it feels like a branding nightmare. I don't know how you guys feel, but when you hear serious games, it sounds like it's for a very, very serious purpose. Like someone's either going to die or that it's either going to be very, very dull and boring. But it's not the case. It's applying it purposefully to a serious topic. So that could be law, it could be business, it could be healthcare. So yeah,
I mean, it fits healthcare brilliantly, doesn't it? For what we are trying to do.
Absolutely.
For me, where's the balance? Obviously, on one scale you've got fun, and on the other side you have learning. And this is something that me and Sarah have struggled with balances. Because if you go one way, it's just a game, and if you go the other way, it's just learning.
Boring.
Or boring. However you want to. Where do you think the balance is?
I think if you're designing it for a learning purpose, you need to make the learning first, and then you fit the game around the learning. But you have to be creative with what you're trying to achieve. So, for example, if you're trying to, let's just say, do teamwork, then a good way to do that is to do a multiplayer game. So whether that be a tabletop sim or an escape room, for example, those sort of things work really well to get those in. So you don't necessarily need to design for engagement. You need to design for learning, and then have the fun comes with that, with your creativity and your imagination and your storytelling, essentially.
Yeah, do you agree, Sarah?
Yeah, I mean, in a way, it almost you could almost end the podcast right there. We've answered the big question, which is how do you make it work, really? Which is, I mean, our big struggle when we were creating our game, which, to be fair, we're still waiting to see the results of, was we kind of got very excited with creating the actual game, doing something exciting and fun. And then several months into the process, we were like, hang on a second, what actually are our learning objectives? What are we actually trying to achieve here? Which is funny because, when we write a sim, just a general normal high fidelity simulation, we would never start with what the content of the sim is without looking at the learning objectives first. And in a way, once we'd kind of narrowed down the learning objectives and really decided what it was we were trying to achieve, surprisingly, to me at least, putting the rest of the gameplay in actually became easier. But I'm not sure that we would have been able to do that if we hadn't come up with the concept of the game first. So it turns into a very circuitous route, really. It makes the most sense to
chicken or an
start
egg
with
kind of situation.
yeah, it makes the most sense to start with the learning objectives, but then if we had done that, would we have come up with as robust and entertaining a concept? I'm not sure. And it probably probably comes because of our inexperience more than anything in serious gaming.
Yeah, I mean, we did have a set of learning objectives. They were just a little bit, let's do human factors and non-technical skills. We wasn't specific on which ones was we, because we were just like, let's do them all. Is that not is that not key? So, and we had to. I think we got a little bit distracted in the generating of the game, and maybe you kind of lose vision a little bit within all the excitement, and the scope creep, how things can easily get out of control. Being maybe one of the biggest barriers was time. Trying to fit this all in a session of around about an hour. Because there's quite a lot there to cover, isn't there?
Well, yes, you can't cover all of the human factors and non-technical skills possible in an hour anyway. Even if you were just doing sim, it's not possible. I mean, I'd be interested to hear, Sophie, more on your thoughts on how to start with the learning objectives and then somehow cement a entertaining concept afterwards, especially if you do have a time constraint, not just of how short the session needs to be, but a time constraint from fruition, like idea generation to actual fruition of the game.
Okay, so maybe if I use an example of the escape room, it's a face-to-face escape room. And as part of the minor illness course, we wanted to, if I start at the beginning, then maybe I can sort of go through exactly what we did. So wanted to include some more simulation. It was quite didactic previously, but doing a sim felt a lot like the OSCE, so a clinical exam that we were doing for the course. And it's quite an intense course anyway. So it felt like just more of the same. I didn't want it. I wanted it to be fun and engaging. I wanted it to be formative. And we were tight on budget. Like I'm sure everyone in the NHS is right now. So I said, okay, well, I've read an article on they used an escape room. Let me see if I can do it. So being the good, evidence-based clinician I am, I went and researched it a bit more and found out a little bit more and put it into practice. So within 3 months, I had done subject matter experts. I had built and designed it, and I had test run it, and I was going straight on to my first run of students. And it was incredible. The story is what sold it, and actually making the puzzles almost have a cognitive fidelity. So within sim, we talk about physical reality, and it's very, very close to the real thing as much as we can with tech and moulage and all the bells and whistles that it comes with. But with this, I designed it with a plastic box that was a quid from Amazon and a bit of paper and a dummy that we already had. And the actually placing jigsaw puzzle pieces around the dummy made them assess the patient just to find the puzzle as they would do with a normal patient. So you're actually creating things that they go about the task. They don't perhaps perceive it as being real, but they're actually doing it in a way that their brain perceives as the real problem solving that they undergo. And then the learning was fantastic. I think it was more than 70% difference in confidence levels between beforehand and after the escape room from that particular run of it. But then once you've done something like that, you don't need to do very much to it. It's like a lot, perhaps, Craig being a sim tech could tell you more, but there's a lot to it when you have a sim to run. There's a lot of consumables, there's a lot of cleaning up, there's a lot of maintenance to make sure all of these things go and continue. Not so much with a game. It's much, much less.
Yeah, I mean, it's what I loved is that you had a problem with, things being, slow or boring. And the game is a really cool way to, almost jazz things up a little bit, isn't it? It's a way to take them away from PowerPoint or, some kind of, slow thing that they're used to and actually put them into a different environment where, you get to see all these non-technical skills fall out. How how do you think it compares? I mean, obviously you're doing some kind of evaluation afterwards, but do you think it's still worth it, even if you wasn't getting as good as results, just because, you know, they might be taking more in, but they maybe don't like the game part as much because they're not used to it?
100%. It's definitely worth every second that I've put into it. I've run this for 3 years now, this escape room, every year. And each time it's been bigger or better. There's always something I can change, I can learn. Just as I'm sure there will be with sim when you run things and things, you know, practice never stays the same itself. I think from the thing is with sim that like there's a lot of talk of almost them competing with each other for the same spot in the curriculum, and I don't feel that that's fair because they're coming at it almost like different tools within the same kit. So you have the ability of games to engage and almost like particularly with teamwork, and like you were talking about human factors. So if you sometimes a big part of that is hierarchy within healthcare. We have a lot of those. And sometimes they're particularly difficult to get around in a sim. But actually with a game, you put that in front of them and you call it a game, then that hierarchy disappears because it's a game. So it makes it safe to approach some difficult topics in that way. Yes, it is a high upfront time needed to develop it, but it is worth it. You see their learning, their enthusiasm, their sense of achievement, and then the general course feedback you get at the end of it, and not just for the session. There's significant things here that we are still only just scratching the surface on uncovering.
Yeah, I mean, we've been watching others play a game for a while, haven't we, Sarah? So we're watching a maternity game at the moment.
Nice.
And sometimes we feel that they have a set of learning objectives, but sometimes we feel like there's more happening in between the learning objectives. That is, you know, simulation gold almost. You know, you can see things happening, and we're just wishing, you know, they would exploit it for 100% of what it's worth, rather than just maybe getting lost in the objectives almost, because you know there's this almost transformational in situ thing that I'm seeing, where actually you don't know what you're testing almost until they play the game, and then you see all this stuff just fall out, and you're like, well, these are unintended learning outcomes. I mean, it's brilliant.
And it makes you so happy.
And you see it, you don't, because we're watching it on camera and we see how proud the facilitators are when they say the right thing. You're like, yes, that's exactly what I was going for. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, and I mean, even if you take it before the maternity game that Craig is referencing is quite new. Actually, it's only been going for a couple, maybe a month or so. But last year they ran a escape room as well, and I mean, it was really fun. It was really well received. Most people were willing to say that it was the favorite part of their maternity training day. But one thing that I do vividly remember from the escape room, very affectionately named Escape Womb by the maternity team, was that when they went to sort of debrief it after the actual escape room, most of the conversation, perhaps unsurprisingly, was kind of directed towards talking about the puzzles themselves rather than the application of the knowledge or the non-technical skills into real life, which is not impossible to do, but I feel takes quite a skilled level of debriefing. I'd be interested to know how you found that, since you've been running the escape room for so many years.
Good question. I think for the first run of it, we were finding our feet very much. I think we found the same thing as you. It's kind of like no model is out there really fits the purpose.
Sure.
So we've been using the diamond model for a while, and me and my co-debriefer Will, we do debrief fairly well, if I can say that. And when we were using it, we found it quite difficult. The process fit more with sim than it did with sim games. So we tried to take the analysis, the individual step first, to just discuss the flow of the puzzles. What was it that you actually went through? let's talk about those puzzles, which came next. Then they kind of get out all of this sort of feeling about this really irritated me, I couldn't find this puzzle, and this happened. And then you can get into the analysis of, why did I show you that puzzle? What did you learn? What was that puzzle trying to teach you? Why did I put in a red herring, for example? Because I'm teaching you situational awareness.
Sure. And a bit of like clinical reasoning as well. Sometimes there are things that don't actually contribute towards your final diagnosis, but you still have to consider them.
Yeah,
that's interesting. I never really thought about it like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things that, if I'm right saying this, Sarah, is that we have concerns because we are going live with the game on Wednesday, and I think we're fairly confident that the game works. But our worry is that we need to reflect real life situations, so we need to pull them almost back out of the game and back into the hospital pretty much. And how does this reflect real life and clinical practice? But we don't know what they're going to say, and we don't know how the game's going to run. So you've got to almost think quite fast on your feet, and although we are preparing, so we are giving us debriefers notes and these almost golden questions. But there's a little bit of the unknown there, isn't there, of being able to mirror it.
It's particularly difficult when you haven't designed the game either, because you don't know exactly what was the reason when you did that. Like, do you know what I mean? That's, if you're facilitating someone else's game, it can be quite a challenge to understand that.
Which is why one of the reasons Craig was referring to our debrief notes. I've tried to be as explicit as possible as to why the game runs the way that it runs, to make it easier for other facilitators when eventually they do start to take over, like mine and Craig's role in running the game. But I think my apprehension perhaps comes from thinking more about the fact that in a way it's almost easier to apply clinical reasoning to hospital work because that's the bulk of what we do. But I'm almost worried that yes, non-technical skills are of course universal, they transcend sort of subject matter, but because it's such a nebulous concept, I wonder how easy it will be to pull it out of a game that has almost nothing to do with being in a hospital to real life practice.
Record it and see. I promise you it will. The first time I was the same. I was like, oh, I wonder, because they're all taught. My practitioners are all taught to be alone workers. So they're all working on their own. They all know that they're part of an MDT, but they never work in a group of 4 or 5 or even more. So shoving them all in the escape room, they had to figure it out. And they did. Sure. And it was fascinating to see the methods that each group tried. Yeah. And then you can bring that out in the debrief. Why did you do that? And then you can show them the video as well. That you did this here. Why did you do that?
That's not a bad point, especially because we will be doing it in the sim room, so we will have access to lots of angles and things like that.
Yeah, good sound. I think it'd be great for you guys.
We've been quite brave on what we've done, haven't we, Sarah? We've kind of thinking outside the box for our game. Would you like to, for those people that probably don't know, would you like to give them a kind of a rundown of what we've actually done?
Sure. It feels scary to talk about the game before we've actually launched it.
It's in 2 days' time. By the time this is out, we've probably already run it.
That's true. But I mean, I'm sort of explaining it without the conviction of knowing that it works. I mean, we have obviously tested it, but it's one thing to test it with a load of simulation-minded faculty, and it's another thing to test it with participants. So our game, it's a Dungeons and Dragons style tabletop game, which again is kind of crazy. I actually have never played Dungeons and Dragons, so
me either. I mean, we've only seen Stranger Things, haven't we? And that's kind of where most of the inspiration for it has come from. We didn't even pick it. This wasn't our idea.
Yeah, that's true. I've seen exactly one episode of Dungeons and Dragons, Stranger Things, so my concepts of Dungeons and Dragons are very nebulous. But essentially, it's a post-apocalyptic or post-war setting, and the hospital that the game is set in is called Last Light, and the participants are split into 2 teams. One is the multidisciplinary team of clinicians and healthcare professionals, and the other team are zombies or infected, however you want to refer to them, but they're people who have been affected by the fallout of this post-apocalyptic world that they live in. And they are to work in teams, and they have a different set of objectives. So the zombies are trying to stop the MDT from successfully evacuating patients on the board, who are to be collected by military evacuation after an hour of gameplay. And the MDT's objective is to keep the patients alive. And gameplay actually occurs through a series of card choices and also dice rolls.
Amazing.
So they start by they roll the dice essentially to see how many patients are going to start with on the board. And they get a counter per member of the MDT, and they will sort of get a 5-minute slot to deploy their counters that represent them and their patients on the board. The board has 6 wards. Some of them are sort of more open and exposed to the outside world where the zombies can enter, and some of them are a bit more protected. The zombie team then also gets the same amount of time to deploy their pieces based on where they can actually enter the hospital. And then gameplay is a series of turns where the MDT can either choose resource cards or action cards, or move around the board, and the zombie team get zombie cards or movements. And the way that it works is that each rotation is actually based on a learning objective. And in each rotation, there's an event card which will sort of force them to utilize non-technical skills in order to sort of succeed against the objective. So one of our objectives is being able to make decisions under pressure. And another one is sort of working effectively as a team when situations change. So one of our scenarios is the hospital is overrun by an extra number of zombies. So the zombie team will roll against the games master to decide the number of zombies and then add more people onto the board. And the teams will have to sort of re-strategize in order to cope. And then your action cards and resource cards will be things such as treating your patients, or being able to move teams more swiftly, or moving 2 people at once instead of just one, or evacuating patients to a safe zone. So it's not really about clinical acumen at all. It's more about playing within the time, considering where the best places are to put people and how to utilize the minimum resources you have, such as PPE, to overcome the zombie team. But of course, those human factors still apply to the zombies as well. Craig, I don't know if there's anything that you want to chip in.
Yeah, I mean, the way I like to look at it is that the zombies are metaphors for all the barriers that stop you doing your job in the end of the day. And essentially, as you said, the events are our learning objectives. So, for one, they might pull a card that says mass casualties are coming in, and they'll roll to see how many casualties they're getting. The dice goes up to 12, so they could easily be overwhelmed with 12 casualties, all at once. And then they demonstrate, the strategy of where to put them, where the zombies are, where to avoid, that kind of stuff. But what we've also done, we've built
powerful.
We've built it into the immersion as well. So this is in an immersive room. So all the sounds and all the voice actors and all the environments replicate depending on what event they get.
Is this what you put? Look, is this what you put on LinkedIn?
Yeah. So you might have seen a picture of it. Yeah. So we're going live on Wednesday, and obviously we're kind of my main worry is that it's a little bit out there, But I think it was based on a conference that someone went to, and they were saying, look, it doesn't matter what the game is, It could be anything, and and it's something different, because we understand that most normal people don't like simulation. They find it quite stressful, quite provoking of all kinds of different emotions. So actually, why not just take a little pause from it and let's do something a little bit different rather than 6 sims back to back.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It sounds super exciting, and I bet they will absolutely love it. Can I? Yeah. Well, good luck. Genuinely, that sounds amazing. Can I ask you a question about it? Like, how would you keep that psychologically safe, if with all of the uncertainty of a dice roll?
Yeah, I mean, it is a difficult question because we do have different dices depending on how many players. So remember that our safety net is the games master. So the games master has certain tools at their disposal to make things harder or easier depending on which way the the needle is flowing. So if the MDT are having a particularly difficult time, he does have certain assets to make it easier. For instance, they can press a button on the immersive, which will put in a radio call to the military, who will swing by as they're passing by to take some casualties off their hand or some evacuees. And it's the same for the zombies. If the MTT are winning too much and there's hardly any zombies or they're doing too well, you can press a button where it almost boosts up the zombies and allows extra zombies to come in through different actions. So although there is an element of randomness to it, we do feel like we've got good control over certain scenarios, because we were massively worried about it going too quick or taking too long. So the games master does have overall control of guiding their experience along, as a confed would do in simulation, pretty much.
Nice.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
and in a way, the funny thing about this is when we started to sort of write down the debriefing notes for this game, and mapped it directly onto the template that we use for simulation, I think when we really started to build it from the learning objectives up, we kind of really started to see that actually the people in the game, not including the participants, are actually directly related to how a sim works. The debriefer or the lead is the lead in a normal scenario. The games master is the confed, and the learning objectives are the same. Like, we could run this as a simulation if we so wished. Obviously, without the zombies, it would have to be a hospital simulation, but it would still work. And then it was just a case of, instead of putting, what would the confed say here to help the MDT or to help the patient or to help the zombies? It's just, well, how can we give them a better shake? Do we give them the dice that has 12 on it, or are they struggling? Should we give them the 6-sided dice? So then no matter what happens, it only goes up to 6. And then we have loads of keys as well on the games master board. So if the zombies draw a card that is, stun a member of the MDT so that they can separate them from the patient, it's they have to roll a 12 to successfully complete it, but there's still a bit of leeway. If you get 7 to 10, you might stun them and they miss a turn. So you're not necessarily taking away all the control, but you're giving them still a bit of chance so they feel like it's gamified, even if we do have a little bit of control.
And they also have there's also a panic buzzer there as well, isn't there? So they have, when they're completely overwhelmed, they have this emergency buzzer that they can pull. And depending on, the situation and the role that they get a certain, perk to allow them a bit of freedom. Yeah.
It's really difficult, isn't it? With sim, we worry about what people are bringing into a sim and how they react to things that we don't know and have no control over. Sure. And with a game, you've got the same, but also their gaming experience previously. Are they going to understand how to solve this, how this works? Did you guys find this as well? Like, having never played Dungeons and Dragons, was that?
I mean, I'm worried about demographic. I am. Because I believe that a game like this would really probably sit well with undergrad or foundation and training. I worry if a maternity or a nurse cohort, that they might not grasp the zombie concept as much as, maybe. I don't know. Again, I'm just a little bit nervous about that. That it don't fit for everybody. Evaluation, we'll see. I'll see.
Yeah. And I mean, we were grabbing anytime someone was walking into the center who didn't have a concept of the game. We were like, right, let's explain it to them. If they understand it, it's probably the instructions probably make sense, with a view that everyone who's sort of been in who's in a sim center sort of either full-time or part-time will probably have heard us talking about it, and that influences your understanding. So anytime someone who had no idea came in, I was like, right, I need to explain this to you. Does this make sense? Would you be able to play this game? And that did sort of refine our pre-brief and instructions. But in terms of, will they actually like it? Will they enjoy it? Is it something that, the demographic, will it match? Will it line up? I think that's something that only time will tell.
Yeah.
I love the idea. I don't want you to feel like this has to be perfect from the get-go, because it is a constantly iterative, cyclical thing. Yeah. You start with an idea and you perfect it. So don't feel like it has to. And it's the same for anyone trying a game. Try first, see how it goes, and then change it, because you will need to.
I mean,
Yeah.
if you mirror this to, so we've been doing VR for a long time, and if you'd asked me 4 years ago before we started it, I would again gone for undergrad foundation will love VR. Maybe a more mature nurse would probably not grasp the concept and probably not like it as much. And actually, that was completely reversed because of the way that actually undergrad and foundation preferred simulation and not VR because they like to get their hands dirty. And actually, midwives and nurses didn't like sim. So they preferred the VR because actually what we're doing is although they don't like, if it was on its own, they might not like it, but because it's replacing something that they didn't like as much as well, so they're no longer having to go in there, get microphones and cameras on. Actually, it might relieve a lot of anxiety for, just for a little part of it. But again, we don't even know, do we? And someone's got to do it first. We just got to try.
Yeah, do it. Absolutely. I'm sure it'll be worth it.
Yeah, I hope so. I feel like it's taken a huge amount of, as you say, upfront work is rather extensive.
Yeah, I mean, how many hours do you reckon you put into this game, Sarah? Or if you would to us?
I don't know. I think I've kind of stopped counting because it's.
I mean, how long did it take you to make an escape room there, Sophie? How long do you reckon it takes?
For my first one, it took me 3 months. And I've built a digital version with Oxford Brookes, and that took about the same time, but a lot of that was taken up with actually finding the right software to use. So, and that's alongside my day job as well. That was, so it's longer than a quick PowerPoint, but it's worth the effort.
Yeah, I mean, where's the complication? Why does it take that long? Where's the barriers? What's the part that takes the longest?
It's the learning curve, I think. So when you with the face-to-face one, it was actually understanding the design and linking all of these moving parts together. And with the digital one, it was about the tech. It was actually getting the software to do what I wanted it to do and actually learning how to use it. But again, once you've got that knowledge, it's there and you can use it again, and you can pretty much make it in much less time. Give me a month, I could probably make a fairly decent escape room, face-to-face one now.
A month is impressive.
Sorry?
A month is crazy. I can't even imagine putting something like that together in a month.
Yeah, I mean, the hardest.
Want to try?
Honestly, yes, and that's terrifying considering how hard the game was.
I mean, we've already got a couple of escape rooms that we want to do already, haven't we? I mean, we've got the bones of one. Yeah,
but I do think, again, we got so excited about the escape room, the learning may have been well, not left behind, but it may need a little bit more looking at. But I do really like the idea of an escape room, and I also really like the idea of an escape room that kind of forces you to go through the steps that you would do in a real life assessment of a patient. I feel like it's a really, not sneaky, but it's a great way of sort of disguising the muscle memory that you're trying to get them to pick up without making them just go and do a to E and an OSCE type situation, which obviously is not very psychologically safe.
No.
Yeah,
that's a great thing about serious games. It kind of lends itself to that muscle memory, that sort of skill mastery of procedures before you actually then go and try it out on a real dummy, I suppose. Not a real patient, but going actually into sim. So serious games make a nice warm-up act, or sort of like a bridging to make sure everyone's at the same level before you go into something big like sim.
So, Sophie, what do you think the important parts to capture on your evaluation are? Because we're going through planning through it at the moment, and we were, like I say, we want to do a little mini, not like an end of course. We don't want to capture it there. We want the game's just finished. Here's a little bit of paper. Just circle a few boxes, really quick. What's the important stuff that we should capture?
Whether learning has happened, so whatever your learning objectives are, find a question to prove that the learning has stuck. Engagement, did they enjoy it? Were there any problems? And cognitive load, were there any sticking points that really were a problem? Those are my 3 big ones, yeah.
Yeah, because like I say, we're trying to figure it out at the moment, and we don't want to give them 10 questions. We just want to give them a couple of questions so they can just quickly circle a few things, and then maybe capture a little bit more at the end. And because we've got in the back of our minds that we'll probably be going to the conferences, maybe presenting this at some point. But
sorry, go on.
And we also want to know, again, hopefully, was it worth
it work?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you were saying that's your question after the escape room, is that right?
Well, Sarah, what questions did you settle on? I don't know if we've settled, but what were you playing with?
We're sort of spitballing with a variety of questions. My kind of thought process was to have sort of a very short questionnaire after the actual game, and then use our normal simulation evaluation questionnaire for the end of the course. And the ones for at the end of the game were sort of we're sort of spitballing them at the moment, but things like, did you enjoy the game? And then maybe more focused questions on whether the game allowed them to hit specific learning objectives that we were trying to aim for in terms of non-technical skills. So were they able to practice teamwork in a way that they would be able to translate it into real life practice, or decision making under pressure, or making decisions when resources are scarce? Phrasing not quite there yet, but working on it. And then the thing that I'm sort of umming and ahhing about at the moment is how to sort of ask them whether the game promoted psychological safety as a modality of a simulation, but not in a way that turns them away from simulation, because obviously that's not what we're trying to achieve, but whether they thought it worked, whether it did actually allow them to learn about and practice non-technical skills.
I think you just found your question right there. Say that.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, the line in the sand for me is because we're privileged with working in a simulation centre. I sometimes wonder, would it be better just to have another simulation scenario? Sometimes I wonder if there is the line in the sand, but it feels like it doesn't matter if it doesn't, if it's not as good as a simulation, because it's different and a little bit more fun, and maybe it's all right to take a little bit of a hit on the learning, those kind of things, where actually the learning wasn't as impactful, but this is the learning that has stuck with you. This is the stuff that you will be able to remember in a couple of months' time, rather than maybe a non-technical skills presentation.
Yeah, I think if you're going to try and prove whether the learning stuck, I think you need to do pre and post questionnaires to see, to definitively say that, and potentially even a delayed post as well to show that retention has happened. But again, with any educational tool that you have, just like Sim, that everyone is going to take something different. You can try as best you can to give them the same knowledge, but everyone will walk away with something different, and something different will have stuck. This is a comment I find a lot with escape rooms, is that people say, well, you can't ensure that they all have the same knowledge because they're not all working on the same puzzle. No, but they all work as a team because all of the intermoving parts relate to each other. And therefore you need to have your shared mental model to be able to work together. So I think it's difficult to know, particularly when you're in the thick of a design. It's like, can you see the wood for the trees? To know whether you're doing the right thing, when you're on the right track. Do you find that as well?
Oh yeah, it's absolutely. It's taken us 3 or 4 months just to get to this point where we're about to launch on Wednesday, and we're still not 100% convinced that we're on the right track, or if we're hitting it from the right angle.
Well, if you ever need a game tester, let me know.
Yeah, I mean,
always happy to have game testers. Literally every available opportunity, I'm always asking people, if you're free, just come down. We need 3 or 4 of you to play, and that's pretty much it.
I mean, that's one of the barriers, that because we're creating a game that is up to 12 people. Whenever you get 12 play testers ready for an hour, you never have that amount of people ready to play or practice a game. So really, the only time you're going to get that is when actually you're pretty much live. We are play testing on the go. Although we have, as Sarah's alluded to, we've played it with 4 or 5 faculty members.
Yeah, but it's not the same. it's not the same, really.
No, they know too much.
They know too much. Yes, I know.
Who make board games, who get focus groups and things of that nature.
So when you play test it, do you just get them to go in and just play it and see what happens?
Yeah, but the problem is that it's hard to be closed-minded because they've been part of the prepping and the planning. So already we take things for granted that they probably know certain things. So although we've had a few people who have never played games and are not into simulation, so just trying to explain the rules to them, and maybe we're not taking things for granted when we say things like 1d6. Do you know what a 1d6 is? Because everyone's used to that now because we've been playing it for months.
Played D&D, yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's difficult.
1d6, 1 6-sided dice, just to clarify.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
Gone from sim jargon to game jargon.
I know.
So we're coming up to the end of our hour. Let's finish on one piece of advice from you both. If someone's thinking about making a game of some description, what's your biggest piece of advice that you'd give them? Sarah, do you want to start?
It's kind of it's going to be sort of 2 pieces of advice. My first one is always allocate more time than you think you will need. I think we thought we could do it in 3 months. I think for your first ever endeavor, 6 is not a bad shout. 5 maybe. And the second one is, as is true of all projects, if you do not have a strong leader who kind of collects the ideas and sticks to a direction, it's very easy to get sort of multi-directional and get very lost. Start with your learning objectives and then have someone who's going to call the shots so that you're all working towards the same sort of direction. Otherwise, it becomes very difficult to get a cohesive project.
Mm-hmm.
Sophie, for you?
Yeah. Don't be afraid to be creative. Use what you have access to. They won't care if you build a prototype out of card to test it with them or a puzzle, but you'll get a lot back from it. And the people will value being on the journey with you. Co-produce a game where you can as well. That's always fun.
Yeah, I hear, because you're always going to have those naysayers. The people that they don't believe as much in certain projects. So it gives you.
Yeah, there's a lot of stigma to overcome in there, isn't there? But
yeah, because
definitely.
people, especially for the hardcore simulationists, they love sim so much. So when you try to take something away and change it, it's difficult, isn't it, sometimes? But it's nice being able to prove them wrong. Absolutely. All right, guys. Well, thank you very much for coming along and talking today.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Sophie, brilliant. Thank you very much, and good luck, guys. Good luck for Wednesday.
You too.
Especially you, Sarah. Good luck.
Good luck to us for Wednesday. Yeah, lovely meet you, Sophie.
High five.
And that brings us to the end of this episode of the SimTech podcast. A huge thank you to Sophie and Sarah for joining me and sharing their experiences and insights into the world of serious games in simulation. Always fascinated to hear how creative approaches to learning can help engagement, communication, teamwork, and ultimately patient care. If you've enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow the SimTech podcast and share it with your colleagues and fellow simulation enthusiasts. And as always, if you've got a product, project, idea, or story from the world of simulation that you'd like to talk about, please feel free to get in touch. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time on the SimTech podcast.